Welcome back to another explainer. Today we're going to look up at the sky and completely demystify a modern miracle that, let's be honest, we all totally take for granted. If you've ever sat in a window seat, stared out at those massive metal wings, and wondered how hundreds of tons of machinery just float in the clouds, well, you are in the right place. But get ready, because everything you think you know about flying might be completely backwards. It really is the ultimate question, isn't it? We board these giant metal flying tubes, buckle our seatbelts, and just blindly trust the physics. But how does an airplane actually fly? Well, let's dive into this and uncover the hidden mechanics happening right outside your window. Okay, first things first. We have to debunk the absolute biggest aviation myth out there. Most people look at those gigantic, roaring jet engines and just assume they are blasting the plane upward into the sky. Nope. In reality, those massive engines just push the plane violently down the runway. They provide forward thrust and nothing more. It's actually the wings that do all the heavy lifting. The engines push, the wings lift. So here's our flight plan for this explainer. 1. Engine versus wings. 2. The science of wings. 3. Slots and flaps in action. 4. Stabilizers and control. And finally 5. Helicopters and ground power.
All right, Section 1, engine versus wings. Pushing versus lifting.
Look, an engine's literally only got one job: propel the aircraft forward at incredibly high speeds. Take a look at the gigantic Airbus A380, the largest passenger jet in the world. It has 4 massive engines, but you could run those at maximum power all day long, and that plane is never leaving the ground without its wings. The engines are just there to get the air rushing over the wings as fast as humanly possible.
Moving right along to Section 2, the science of wings and how lift is created.
See, a wing isn't just some solid, immovable piece of metal. It's a highly complex machine in itself. Just check out the anatomy here. At the very front edge, you have the slat. Up on the top surface, you've got the spoiler. And on the bottom rear edge, you have the flap. By tweaking these 3 components, pilots completely control how the air interacts with the plane. Oh, and here's a totally wild fact for you. You know that massive empty space inside the wing itself? That is the fuel tank. That's exactly where all that heavy, highly combustible jet fuel is safely stashed for the journey.
So the crucial point is understanding how these specific wing parts actually create flight, and it all boils down to Bernoulli's principle. This is just a brilliant law of physics stating that as air speeds up, its pressure drops. That's it. Flight is literally just a calculated manipulation of this principle. The wing is shaped and adjusted so that the air rushes faster over the top than it does underneath. Faster air on top means lower pressure on top. Meanwhile, the higher pressure trapped underneath simply pushes the whole airplane up into that low-pressure void.
All right, Section 3, slats and flaps in action.
Let's actually walk through the exact takeoff sequence step by step. Step 1, the engine revs up and pushes the plane roaring down the runway. Step 2, the pilot tilts those front slats downward. This acts almost like a ramp, powerfully deflecting the oncoming air up and away from the top of the wing, clearing out the air and dropping the pressure dramatically. Step 3, at the very back of the wing, the flaps drop down like a giant catcher's mitt to catch the high-pressure air rushing underneath. So you've got a vacuum pulling from the top and a massive wall of air pushing from the bottom. The result? Liftoff. Now I want you to think critically about these precise pressure dynamics for a second. If tilting the front slats down lowers the pressure on top to lift the plane, what happens if the pilot leaves the front slats totally flat but still drops the back flaps down?
This brilliantly illustrates the pure genius of aircraft design. The plane descends. If you keep those front slots flat, you're not deflecting the air anymore. Instead, normal atmospheric pressure slams right down on top of the wing. And at the same time, the flaps deployed in the back are catching air to slow the plane's forward speed. You've essentially just turned the wing into a giant aerodynamic brake, safely and steadily pushing the plane back down toward the Earth for a landing.
Which brings us to Section 4, stabilizers and control, steering the plane.
You know, the main passenger cabin, where you and I sit, is basically just a hollow tube with air conditioning, some music, and meal trays. The real control of the aircraft happens all the way at the very back. You've got your horizontal stabilizers, which look like mini wings on the back, and they control the up and down pitch of the nose. Then you have the vertical stabilizer, that big shark fin standing straight up, that steers the plane left and right. Without these pieces, an airplane literally wouldn't be able to fly straight for a single second. It would just tumble through the air like a flipped coin.
To truly respect how vital this is, you just have to remember this sobering aviation rule. If the tail is gone, the plane is gone. This was devastatingly proven during a tragic Japan Airlines flight.
There was a hidden crack in the tail's structure that had been improperly covered by a maintenance sticker for years. Mid-flight, the immense pressure finally caused the tail to tear off completely. And despite the pilots giving it everything they had, without those horizontal and vertical stabilizers, the aircraft was completely uncontrollable. The tail really is the ultimate anchor of the sky.
Finally, Section 5, Helicopters and Ground Power. Let's look at some hidden mechanics.
Helicopters are just wild machines. They use Bernoulli's principle too, but instead of pushing a wing forward, they just spin the wing really fast on top of the cabin. But physics always demands a reaction. So as that massive main rotor spins one way, it creates intense torque that wants to spin the helicopter's body in the opposite direction. Without intervention, the helicopter would just get horribly dizzy and spin out of control. And that is exactly why you have a tail rotor. It furiously cuts through the air sideways, creating just enough opposite force to stop the spinning and keep the cabin perfectly straight.
But check this out, because there's a really clever workaround. Standard helicopters absolutely require that tail rotor to survive. However, some highly expensive Russian designs use a dual rotor system. They literally stack two massive main rotors on top of each other, spinning in completely opposite directions. The opposing forces naturally cancel out the spinning momentum. It's incredibly complex and super expensive to build, which is exactly why most of the world just sticks to the trusty tail rotor.
Okay, let's solve one last mystery. When you board a plane at the gate, those massive main engines under the wings are completely turned off. Yet, the lights are on, the air conditioning is blasting, and the cockpit screens are glowing. How? Well, the answer is the APU, or Auxiliary Power Unit. This is a tiny hidden jet engine tucked away in the very back cone of the tail. It runs quietly while the plane is parked, providing all the necessary electrical power and air conditioning so the main engines can safely rest until it's time to push back.
And there you have it. The secret, beautifully engineered life of an aircraft operating right in front of our eyes. Next time you board a flight, take your seat and look out the window. Are you ever going to look at the slats, flops, and tail the exact same way? Or will you see this brilliant, high-speed chess game of air pressure playing out thousands of feet above the Earth? Stay curious, keep looking up, and we'll catch you on the next explainer.